Welcome to Win TV. This is D.Kevin McNeir, the senior editor for the Washington Informer. And today we're joined with Marc Morial, president and CEO of the National Urban League, a position you've had for almost 20 years now. So happy anniversary coming up next May. We're going to get right to it because there's so much we want to talk about and we have limited time. I think the first thing I want to ask you about, however, is the United States inflation rate, which has reached a new 40-year high and 9.1%. And we know that that's particularly impacting Black and Hispanic families across the United States, gas prices, food prices.
First of all, thank you for having me. Kudos to Denise and the Washington Informer team for what you all continue to do, which is to be truthful, informative, and all about civil rights, justice, and equity on behalf of Black America and Black Washingtonians. Having said that, I like to talk about inflation. We have a year and a half in which we've seen jobs come back at a feverish pace after the Great Recession pushed millions and millions of people into the unemployment lines. So jobs have come back, and Black joblessness is now below 6. Overall joblessness is below 4. The disparity still exists, but it's a far cry from the 15 to 20% inflation, unemployment we were seeing. Having said that, the inflation we see today is being driven by the aftermath of COVID and the war in Ukraine. What is the aftermath of COVID? China, which provides the United States with so much of its manufactured goods. China, which is responsible for 1/3 of all manufacturing in the world, has not completely reopened. They still are on a lockdown phase. Therefore, the supply of goods, the supply of appliances and manufactured goods and clothing is slow, and supply is tight, which has upward pressure on prices. Secondly, the war in Ukraine has disrupted the production of oil and petroleum products in a significant way, because Russia, which has invaded Ukraine, is one of the big producers. And there are those that are now refusing to buy Russian gas, Russian oil, and it is creating upward pressures on that. Thirdly, Ukraine is one of the largest producers of grain in the world, and absolutely being at war with people being pushed out of the country, with bombing taking place. Many of those farms are not operational. Sure. And it affects the supply of grain. Now, we may not use Ukrainian grain here in the United States in a large way, but it creates pressure on those that now want to buy our grain that we produce, whether it's corn, wheat, soy, you name it. So there's some factors beyond, let's say, the White House and the Federal Reserve that are driving this inflation. It's not the time to panic. It is the time to be vigilant, the time to be diligent. And we know whenever we have difficult economic times, whether it's higher unemployment or higher inflation, Black America pays the greatest cost and indeed the greatest price. Let's walk back 6 years to the 2016 election. 3 of these justices were nominated by President Donald Trump. Because we had low Black voter turnout in 2016. That's why Roe was overturned. For the first time in modern American history, the Supreme Court has taken away individual rights, snatched back women's right to make the decision. And it's always been simple for me. It isn't about pro or anti-abortion. It's about who makes the choice. The Supreme Court undercut the individual right, the right, yes, the constitutional right of a woman to control. Nothing's more sacred than what takes place in your own body. And that's why it is a deeply troubling and disturbing decision. You have justices saying, well, there's no explicit right to an abortion. There's no explicit right to an automobile in the Constitution. There's no, the Constitution says nothing about televisions, says nothing about the internet, but we recognize free speech as attaching to new technologies that didn't exist when in fact the Constitution was written. So people shouldn't be confused. The Constitution is a document of values and principles, not a list of do's and don'ts.
Right.
And the role of the Supreme Court is to apply those constitutional values and principles to today's America. This Supreme Court is functioning like an unelected legislative junta, where they're going to sit back and second guess everything that's taken place in the last 70 years and say, well, we think Roe was decided wrongly. Well, this is all about the politics of the far right, which through Donald Trump staged a coup, a judicial coup, and took over the Supreme Court. About 20 interns, college interns from a wide range of universities and colleges who were with us this summer. They just did a presentation for us on voting. And one of the things they said is we have to send a message that we're not going to let this voter suppression stop us from voting. That if we have to take a day off from work, you know, if we have to march 100 miles to get to the polling place, we are going to vote. We are going to work. I think what this is really all about, and it kind of ties into the Biden administration, there's a great deal of frustration that we couldn't get the John Lewis bill through the Senate. Why couldn't we get it through the Senate? Two people are responsible for the inability to get that through the Senate. Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, who would not, at this moment of great, great challenge for America, would not carve out an exception to the filibuster rule. Because without the right to vote, look, economic policy, education policy, trade policy, infrastructure, technology, they are important. If we do not have a seat at the table, which is what voting gives us,
certainly,
we're on the menu. We're going to be marginalized. We're going to be talking to ourselves, intellectualizing about policy, raising hell, and no one will pay attention. Part of our power, it's not all of our power, is participating at the ballot box to make our voice heard and not falling into the trap of cynicism and defeatism and feeling sorry for ourselves and saying, well, I don't like the candidate, so I'm going to just stay home. You've just basically said, you all pick the leaders. I'm going to sit in my Chase Lounge chair and go on Instagram and send out some messages. The George Floyd policing bill, difficult, once again, filibuster stops it. Passes the House more than once. So this is what's important. We have to continue to work. We have to continue to be smart. We got to continue to fight for those things, those measures that we know in the best interest of the country. Final thing I'll say, George Floyd Justice Policing Bill, Voting Rights Act, child tax credit, have support from 60 to 65%, in some cases higher amongst the American people. Yet the Senate erects a blockade to prevent them from becoming law.
We are so grateful for you coming on to Win TV.